Aoine, the marriage of Barrie Cooke and Sonya Landweer, two artists occupying the one space, what was it like growing up in that environment?
Interesting, to say the least, and very absorbing, very involved in that they shared with me their love of observation of the world around us, but via their art. Their commitment was to their art. Their commitment was to that which they worked with, all the connections, be it in nature and art, and also their friendships. So I had a tremendous wealth of, how should I say, the variety of life.
Barrie arrived in the mid-50s and he'd never been here before, and had a contact in a fishing tackle shop in the middle of Dublin, and went to see him, and he advised him to go to the west of Ireland, to Clare, for the trout streams, and he went there. And from the moment he arrived, he fell in love with Ireland. He just loved the atmosphere. He felt free here, and he felt that he belonged, as he had never felt quite anywhere before. So he stayed. When he met Sonya in the early 60s in Amsterdam, they fell completely in love, but they decided that they would part for 6 months and not be in touch with each other to see how they felt. And then after that 6 months, they still felt pretty much the same, actually. And then Sonya was invited to, when Kilkenny Design Workshops was being set up, she was invited to establish a ceramic studio in Kilkenny. And that drew her over to Ireland, and from that point on, they were together for the next 20 years.
She came in '65, I think the first show in the Hendricks of her work was '66 or '67, so very, very soon. And they took her work really seriously as art and not craft, which is what most people tend to think of ceramics as, and that was so important to her. It's a battle she fought all her life. She never gave up on it, you know.
Well, they were an extraordinary couple. I mean, they created a kind of little communal sort of space down in Thomastown, in Jerpoint, that had a unique atmosphere of its own. They entertained there, they lived there, they worked there, they gardened there. It became a kind of little microcosm with a magical atmosphere.
They were both very integral to the development of the Kilkenny Arts Festival, Kilkenny Arts Week in those days. They were very generous hosts in terms of place to sleep, to be, to eat, not only to be merry, but to also really discuss what it was that whoever was into. We hosted always the visual artists and the literary artists. Seamus Heaney would have been a close friend of both of them, where they really explored their respective worlds. He used an excerpt of the poem to a Dutch potter when he received the Nobel Prize. It's about Sonya, it's about history. It was written at the time of the First Iraq War, what man can do and its disastrous effect to one another, let alone nature. And also how, if you can harness that, what magnificence can also come of that.
From Sonya, Barrie took up her interest in Rudolf Steiner and a very close link to nature and the workings of nature. And that runs through everything that he did. Even before he met Sonya, he was already carefully attuned to the natural world, and that increased his interest in it and his response to it.
They had a great respect for the fragility, brittleness, and at the same time resilience of the earth and nature and all that is around it. I would say they were both fascinated by the layering of light. Barrie through the bodies of water, taking water as a volume and the refractions of light within that. And with Sonya, you have these vast landscapes that are then brought down into a surface that, if you allow yourself to immerse yourself into the surface, you can then feel yourself back into a landscape.
She just drew everything she could get out of the landscape. The colours, the shapes, the dyes that she used in her patinations all came from her knowledge of the landscape and the chemicals in the water and bog water, things like that.
Many people associate Sonya with the integrity of tension and interest and energy and forcefulness. But in her final year, a quietude, a benevolence, listening and observing. Right to the very end, each of them respectively, when Barrie died in 2014, Sonya in 2019, they held their relationship and their conversations and explorations of art was their core meeting, I would say. Their continuing commitment to what they saw of what the other saw was really intense and really remarkable.